everybody. Welcome back to another Flipping the Burrow podcast. We are here at Schneider's Electric Innovation Summit 2025 North America, here in Las Vegas. And I have the honor and the privilege to be here with Mai Lan, who is just an exceptional leader here at Schneider. She's part of the executive team. And I can't wait to just find out more about you. But just from you walking into the room, I feel the energy, and I think this is going to be a great podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So usually we like to start with our guest, from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about what life was like growing up. You are a French American today, but tell me a little bit about just your beginning, and then we'll get into your career.
Yeah. So I was born in France, and I have actually a dad who is Vietnamese and a mom who's French, right? So I've grown up first in Paris, and then we moved to a very, very small town in Brittany, where you eat the salted butter.
Yes.
I basically grew up in a very, very nice environment in that bicultural world where most of what I saw of the culture of my father was through the food. So this is a big thread in my life. I like to eat. I love to eat. But I would say, what was very, very, solid in my upbringing has been to be exposed to different culture since the beginning. And I think that's a thread that I have now, which has been, as I build my career, the privilege of being able to work with people from different cultures has always been something that has fascinated me, because I do believe that the differences can create chaos, but when in the right environment, can also bring so much value, so much innovation, so much everything, right? So that's kind of my life as a child, I would say. But
that's awesome, and I also think they're quite different as cultures, very different.
Yes, very.
So you kind of take best of both worlds, and I think it did kind of set you up for being in a people-focused, career, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to culture and inclusivity, and just the way people are raised.
Yeah.
Is so different. I got the chance to travel with my last corporate job to, 15 different countries. And I was like, wait, this is so different in how they work and their working hours. And it's really important to be able to kind of make sure that everybody, no matter where they are in the world, feel at home. And as a company, you're so global, but you still have to make sure everybody's in their, thriving.
Yeah, you want to create an environment where people can feel comfortable being themselves. They don't have to wear a mask.
Yes.
They don't want to make an effort to feel like they have to fit. What needs to happen is that they feel they can say what they want to say. They can show up how they want to show up. And of course, Schneider has a culture where we still have anchored what we believe in our values, in our leadership impact code, in our purpose. That is something that we all believe in. But yeah, inclusivity is the most important thing, where you still want those differences to appeal. And, when I was growing up in that really small city, my name was very different from any other person, right? So very early on, I've always had to explain, okay, you have an Asian name, but you don't look Asian.
Yeah.
But in other parts of the world, I do, right? So it's very, very interesting. And fast forward, I've had the privilege now to live in 4 different countries and counting. And I think that, one thing I've learned as well is that I don't know much, right? Because when you have to move from country to country, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to come from a place of humility, of trying to understand others, learn their language. So that's something that I really, really do love.
So we're going to get into the world traveler that you are, and also working in different countries. But I wanted to go back to you starting at Schneider. I looked at your LinkedIn, and you're almost, I think, over 20 years with the same company, and growing from, an entry-level job in HR to, where you are today. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about just that climb for the last 20 years? Did you, when you first started in the company, see yourself one day, running HR and, making it to the leadership team? Or would you say just, as the years went by, it just slowly happened?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I'm an HR, right? So I think when you want to build your career, you need to have some level of ambition, right? So I would say that very early on, I wanted to lead something. And when I found the sweet spot of, HR is what I want to do. My business is people. And actually, how do you, manage that asset for a company, whatever it is, has been very quickly what I found to be the most rewarding thing that I could do for myself and for the people around me. But I would say, I think when you build a career, you have to be very open and you have to take a leap of faith. So there's a few things that always have been, the marker of how I decide what's next for me. One was that I wanted to find a culture, a place that, I could see a future. So, Schneider was a great company at the time. It was maybe 2 times smaller, even more. We were not as global, but, the purpose was already very much there. And it felt very exciting. The second is you want to be in a place where you can feel you can learn something and you can keep putting yourself out of your comfort zone. And oh boy, I've not been, I don't think it was written I didn't have, a clear roadmap, but I had a few things like, I want to be able to learn new things. I want to see different, geographies, and I want to be surrounded by people that can teach me something and who I can give back in return. So being curious all the time, and when you feel like, you're not as stretched anymore, I think that's the moment where you have to ask yourself, okay, what's next for me? But you also want to, I think as you grow your career, you want to think about experiences more than jobs. So you need to look at jobs in a way that what are the type of experiences I'm gonna gain, and how can I transfer that into the next role, right? But you have to project yourself. So I always say to a lot of talent, try to behave in the job you have like the job you want to have next.
Yes.
Because that's a way to elevate yourself and actually push forward, right? And that's how I think about career.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially when younger folks do ask me too about careers. It's always do the job that you want before you get the title. Because
Exactly.
when they're going to think about that role, they're like, well, they're doing this, and you still have to do your job very well, but still kind of showcase to leadership that you're willing to take on these other responsibilities. And that's the best way to get noticed. Let's go through your career over the last 20 years. We always, when it comes to advice for, folks who have ambition to keep climbing, what are some tips maybe to, specifically for women? I don't know if you've read the book, How Women Rise, but it's, we're more shy to talk about our accomplishments. We may not, be as, present. We don't want to be seen as much. We kind of want to, what would you tell maybe some female talent on how to get recognized in the right ways and how to keep leading a career?
No, that's a great question. And I think to me, I always looked at good role models around me, right? There's one of my mentors who told me you need to build your own board of directors.
Yes.
With people, that can be from your personal side, professional side, but people that you feel safe enough to actually have real conversation that can give you also candid feedback about how things play out for us women in the workplace. But there's a few things that I've observed. For instance, I do believe as women, maybe earlier in the career, that's the moment where you want to push the envelope, when you still have freedom, if I may say so, to maybe relocate somewhere, take a job that's a little bit over what you would do normally, but that's the moment to do it, right? Because you still do not have maybe as many constraints as when you start building a family, if you decide to do so. It could be as well like having to take care of parents or people around you that need your support, that can actually put a lot of constraint over what you can do. So when you are in your first 10, 15 years, I think that's the moment where you can really, really invest in that professional world, so that you're kind of sprinting a little bit before you can maybe stabilize. And this is exactly what I've done, right? I've done a lot of the move in different countries when I was still very, very agile from a personal standpoint, and I think that helped me very much to get to where I am today. The second advice is you have to have the right mentors and the right champions. When I talk about a champion, I'm talking about leaders in your organization that are your ambassador when you're not in room. So what does that mean? It means that you have to actually create a relationship with them. They have to know what you want, because then they can advocate for you when you're not there. Because most of the time you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And
When they're deciding on your future.
Exactly. And then you have to express what you want, even if you know you're not, like, who is 100% ready for anything? To run a race, to build a family, to go, like, none of us are ready for anything. But I think it's part of, here's what I'm excited about, sharing that, because otherwise people are going to make, assumption about you, about what they know about you, and then they can do like their own little interpretation. So I like to set the record straight about me. So I always say to people, if you have a question, just come ask me, and I'll tell you what exactly it is that I want. Because sometimes in your personal life, things happen, and then people say, oh, that person just got married. Maybe they don't
want to move.
Exactly.
They're going to start a family right away. They start making assumptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because people make assumptions also compared to their own personal life, right? So that, I think that's that. And the third, I think we talk a lot in that book. I remember talking about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That feeling that you enter a room and you don't feel like you belong. Yes, it's true that over the 20 years of my career, I feel it's something women feel more than men, but men do so as well. And here, the best advice I got was from one of my mentors, and it was fake it till you make it. And that notion of faking it till you're making it, it's not that you have to overdo it, but the idea is behave the way you want to behave and just learn. But, if you do it with heart, I think, you can't really go wrong. And if you do wrong, just, learn from it and move on. That's the best thing you can do.
So I have two things to comment that I really liked. When you said, I tell them what I want, and there's always this notion when we talk to a lot of guests, it's you are the CEO of your career and you're driving your career. A lot of times, and maybe in the early years, you kind of just go with the flow, but as you keep climbing, you need to drive your own career. And a lot of times it's you advocating for what you want, saying what you'd like, and it's not just whatever the company wants, but you have to advocate. So I really like that you shared that. And the second part is just mentorship, and the network that you build within the company is so important. I don't think people realize how important it is on just meeting the right people and the impression that you can have on somebody that will then be like, I'd like this person on my team, or, you never know how it goes.
Yeah, connections are everything.
Yeah.
So you have to build them when you don't need them, because they're genuine. They come from the heart. And if something happens and you need those connections, then, it doesn't feel like you're desperate for something.
And you're asking for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's more natural.
Yeah.
I love that. So let's get into your journey to the four different countries that you got to work in. So you went from France to China, then to Brazil, and now the US. So very all over the place.
And Dubai very soon. So,
oh, wow.
So
okay.
I'll be moving to Dubai. So
nice. Yeah. So tell me, on the mobility in your career, I am sure it wasn't always easy. I'm sure at the beginning we're young, we're like, throw me anywhere you'd like. I did the same thing. But obviously as you build a career and your friends and maybe get married, et cetera, it just gets harder. Can you tell me a little bit of maybe how you thought about each of these transitions, maybe the pros and cons that you thought through? And how did you adapt getting into different countries? I had to personally go to a different country a few years ago, and it didn't go the way I wanted. It was very difficult for me to, and even though I think I'm somebody that adapts very well, it's difficult, and you miss home, and you miss what the workplace looks like for you elsewhere. So how did you navigate that? Because I think a lot of people who may be listening will have a mobile career. It's very common nowadays for companies to move you around the world. But what kind of advice do you have for those transitions?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I completely relate to what you said. Like, even if it looks exciting, it's a lot of challenges. It's up and down, and there's cycle in a move, right? And even, I've been in the US for 9 years now. I can see some of our talents from moving from the West Coast to the East Coast, or from, the North to the South. Given the size of the United States, like, you could see, you could argue that moving from one state to the other is like moving countries. Yeah. So I think to me, like going in a new country is like what I told you. Like, you almost have to everything you know, every little thing that seems very easy is difficult, like, opening your bank account, going to the supermarket, understanding, public transportation. If you have a family, getting your kids ready for their new school, supporting your partner, because your partner may have to let their job on the side so that they support your career, right? So there's lots of different things that you have to take into account. And I think my best advice is, you can go to a country and I think, I encourage people to take some time off and go see some of the countries they're interested in to just get a feel for it. But at one point you have to just take a leap of faith and just go. I went to China at the time, back in the day. I didn't know I would move to China. I wanted to go work in Asia, and I went on a leap of faith. And what I told myself is, okay, I'm going for work, and I work for Schneider Electric. It's a great company. I'll be okay
in that bubble of corporate.
And I think in all those moves I made from China to Brazil, which was, a very different country than China, culturally speaking, security-wise, everything was different. I think what I was telling myself as well is, if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to France. That's fine. Like, you have to almost like manage that emotion, that emotional roller coaster inside of yourself, but always go back to, it's okay. Things will be okay. And when they're not okay, you have, a system around you to help you, overcome that. Brazil, it took me a year to adjust. I didn't speak a word of Portuguese or Spanish when I moved there. And I had never been to South America. I literally arrived with my 2 luggage in that country and took a job, managed a team who didn't speak English.
Oh, wow.
You basically realize that, things can be very complicated and you have to make them as simple as you can. The culture was very different, right? Asian culture, Latin America culture.
So different. Complete different.
One culture is more, don't show your emotion. The other one is all about,
big
emotions and so on. So it's, it's an adjustment, right? And I remember that people were telling me that I looked a little bit cold in Brazil. And I realized that every meeting I was starting, you have to take 5-10 minutes to actually ask people about, their families, the football game the previous day, things like that, where in other countries, you don't need to do as much that small
questions.
Talk. And then the United States for me was, I thought it would be one of the easiest, but it's been hard because I was actually with a 3 months baby.
Oh, wow.
And I moved while I was on my leave, right? So the shock of moving to the United States while understanding what it meant to become a parent.
A mom,
And then starting a global job, so being on the road with a baby that couldn't follow me was a massive disruption. Honestly, I think I learned a lot from that first year. And it probably made me better, but I could have done things very differently probably, and it would have been a bit easier. But that's it is what it is, right? You learn from your mistakes.
Learn through them.
And I'm very, very proud of my little boy now, and he's a citizen of the world, right? But I would say you have to want it, and it's not just a job. So for the people of your podcast who are listening and thinking about moving countries, it's a life project, right? So you have to think the professional side, but you also have to think about everything else, because those two worlds collide, and it's important to have them in your mind when you're doing that type of transformation.
Wow. I can't picture China to Brazil just by working with different cultures myself. It is so different.
It is.
And I could see how it could take a while. I remember when I actually had to go to Mexico, which doesn't seem that different, but it's very different. It was just, a lot of people would tell me, you could always go back, but also just learn. And it could be difficult, but the lessons that I learned about myself, about how to adapt, those I'm taking with me forever. So it's like bittersweet. All of these experiences you're just adding to your box of.
And I think what's nice is you build what we call resilience. This is a term that we talk a lot at work in our business about, how you have to adapt to change and be resilient to that. And I think that's what, building career means. Like, how do you build resiliency in yourself and that agility that allows you to kind of jump and manage those ups and downs, because in any, even if you don't change country, when you change job,
Yeah.
there's always that big high at the beginning, and then there's like the realization that not everything's perfect. There's big challenges in the new
Yeah.
job, so you have a bit of a down, and then you have to figure out a way to, what am I going to do about that? What are the 3 or 4 things I'm going to work on? And then you start creating your why, and taking small steps to the North Star, and to the goal that you have for yourself and for the team you're part of.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess I didn't know you were a mom, so I'm glad you mentioned it so I can ask you.
Yeah.
But, we all deal with that motherhood guilt. And I remember myself when I had my daughter, she's 4 now. I was so career driven. All I cared about was my job. And then you become a mom, and obviously things change. I was still very career driven, but there was this new balance that I had to figure out on. I still want to be very present at home, but I still want to do a good job. How did you adapt, or what would you say is the best advice for a new mom where, they don't necessarily want to give up on their career, but also you want to slow down a little bit and enjoy these first few years,
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I did, a town hall a few months ago, where the topic of the town hall was, or the session I was part of was, can women have it all? And it made me reflect, because people tend to think, for instance, I have it all, and I don't actually. I think it's a matter of trading off all the time. I was like you, I was very career driven. I didn't know that I would even have, it wasn't something I was planning for. And, I'm very grateful for that to happen. But I do say a lot to women who come to me I tell them there's never going to be the right time to do that, right? So you can't just delay that, because you never know what's going to happen. So that comes first if that's what you want. Now, if you want to have a career, it's going to be about choices. You're not going to be perfect everywhere. So you're going to have to, manage that guilt, take full accountability, get the support you need when you can. But right now, for instance, I will be, transitioning in another role. I've already, tell my 8-year-old, the next 6 months are going to be very intense for mommy, right? And I need your help, right? But what I try to do is, I can see in my calendar that I have moments where I have lots of travels, lots of meetings, lots of deliverable. But I also try to balance that out,
when you get
later,
back, or
and spend quality time with him, so that I catch up, and I build my own relationship with him. But I would say it's more about quality at this point, and not about quantity.
Yeah.
And I think my best advice is, don't compare yourself to anyone. If I start comparing myself to, other moms around me, that's where it just becomes overwhelming. You're doing your best.
Yeah.
And I think, that's all you can do. And I am proud of the example I set for him. Mm-hmm. Hopefully when he'll be, an adult, he'll have some, he'll look back and say, wow, she was good at all level, and she was doing her best, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be a perfect mom. But interestingly enough, we had a panel, mother-daughter panel, actually, with 3 executives, and they're 19, 20-ish-year-old daughters at one of our last events. And it was so reassuring, because these 3 girls were singing praises about their mom. Everybody was crying, because we all felt that, we're not as present as somebody that's staying home, baking cookies and dropping them off to school every day. But I think at the end of the day, kids want to see their mom just thriving and happy in whatever it is that they decide to do. So I think they were just saying I want to be X, Y, Z because my mom inspired this. My mom is amazing, So it was really cool to see, because we put so much pressure on ourselves on, we're not present. But at the end of the day, you're thriving, and your kids just seeing you thrive and do what you love, which is work.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I totally agree.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about new generation, workforce. We are kind of in this space where we've got still some boomers, we've got Gen Zs coming in, we've got millennials taking over. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then obviously after COVID, a lot of things changed with working from home, and just different expectations, I would say, from the new generation on what they want to look like for work. How are you guys, or how do you look at this new generation where, I would say in years ago, you would stay in a company for 20, 30 years, and that was just the norm. Nowadays, you see so many younger people just bouncing around, or with social media, being able to make money as a content creator. Like, it's just becoming a lot more difficult to attract talent. So I'm sure you read a lot about this kind of subject. What is your thoughts on that?
To me, I think, and that's what I've tried over the last 7 years in North America to do on behalf of the company, was to create, an employee experience and an environment where people feel like while they're here with us at Schneider, they feel like, they have a meaningful, experience with us. And it's just more of an anchor, more than a job, right? That what you want to do is to create a value proposition, a mission, something, a promise that, you're part of something a little bit bigger than you. And that's what I love about Schneider. That's why I stay at Schneider, to be honest. It's the people. Like, a lot of companies are there. Now you have to make sure that this promise is kind of tangible every single day. So I think all generation is actually, having all generation at work is actually an amazing thing. And in that post-COVID era, we were actually talking about that. Schneider has very, very, very quickly decided that we wouldn't be a work from anywhere company. And the idea is that, we do believe that culture is built in the digital world, but also in the physical world. If you look at, if I look back at my career, a lot of the big moments happened in the physical world, right? Because I was at the office, because I was attending a meeting, attending an innovation summit like this one, right? So we have made that decision, and as a result of that, invested quite significantly in rebuilding and reshaping the space of our offices so that it can help, create those experiences for the people to actually connect with one another, innovate, get mentored, and all of that. And if you look at the earlier generation, especially those who have lived through the COVID years, super important for them to come in the physical world to actually learn from other, knowledge transfer and all of that. So I think as CHROs, our HR practitioner, our job is to create benefits and things that actually can benefit all generation. Take something like part-time.
Yeah.
You might want to have people who are late in their career who actually want to dial down, but not completely. Part-time is a great option. You have the middle, working parents, or people who have to take care of,
Their
things.
parents.
Part-time is there. And then you have the early generation. Some of them actually want to be part-time because they are influencer. They are, activists, or they have passion aside, or they want to go do something meaningful. So I think that's what I call creating inclusive benefits and people practices, is that it's not targeted to just one generation. It's targeting, what do you need in that moment? Which persona are you? And then creating an environment where people can upskill themselves so that they have access to actually the type of learning, the type of experiences that will help them upskill themselves, whether they stay at Schneider or they leave, right? Because at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that, we create people who are employable for the community, not just our company, right? We are part of something bigger, and that really is something important, right? So that's kind of how I think about it.
I love that, especially on the part-time. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think companies are just starting to realize that you just need flexibility in whatever that looks like. And part-time, or even taking a career break, that was something that, I was 13 years in my last company, straight out of college. That's the only company I worked for. And I used to think if I just took even a month off, it was the end of my career. Like, you just think you always need to be there. They're going to forget about you. Even with maternity leave, I came back before my maternity leave was over, which I regret because I was just putting so much pressure on myself to be back to work. And a lot of the people that we've interviewed who have made it to C-suite, roles, I'm shocked when they're like, I took a 2-year career break in my mid-30s because whatever it was, or I wanted to have kids and take a whole 2 years off. And it doesn't slow them down to wherever it is that they're meant to get to. I feel like a lot of us are on this timeline of just rushing through the process. By 30, we need to be at a certain position. By 40, as you did the timeline for the last 20 years, what is maybe one advice to just slow down and take in the journey? Because I think that's really like the beautiful part. But a lot of us fall into the forgetting and just goals, and then
Yeah.
we forget about
Yeah,
it.
it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think
Yes.
that's something I tell myself and I tell a
Yeah.
lot of people around me. But I would say one thing we've done at Schneider in the United States, actually in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, so it's a North America benefit, was we created what we call recharge break. And that stems from that idea in Europe, because I come from France,
Yeah.
of those sabbatical, right? That concept doesn't really exist in the US, right? So the idea was like we offer our employee the ability to buy time off ahead of time. So it takes 3 years, and then when you reach that, every year you buy that time, then you can take up to 12 weeks of
Wow.
recharge break. We had an unbelievable amount of people who have, when we enroll every year to
Yeah.
our benefits, the people who actually elect for that benefit was overwhelmingly like 45% of our workforce was actually at all level,
Wow.
executive level to down to the, to
Wow.
the lower level. Believe me, 1 year ago when we started to have to put that in place, I had a little bit of anxiety. My first reaction was like, okay, should we stop it? Because it
many
seemed
people.
to me daunting for leaders to have to manage people who are on leave in general, plus having to add the 6 to 12 weeks of recharge break. But then, I think with my team, we pushed and said, this is a need. People actually want to take time. And now, as I see people coming back and telling us, I've used that to go climb the Kilimanjaros. I've used that to actually spend the whole summer with my kid who's going to go to university. And that was an amazing time for me to actually, use those last moments to send them off. And they come back so refreshed, so renewed, so grateful.
So grateful.
It's a great retention thing. So yes, it is adding a little bit of complexity. I'm very grateful to the people who stay in the company and somehow help manage those people who are on leave. But on the other end, they're also super exciting to be able to help a colleague take that time off, because they know that probably after they might be themselves wanting to do so. So I agree with you. I think it's only 12 weeks at the end of the day. Life is long. And life is long. It's short but long. But I would say, in hindsight, I would say, it's okay to take some time. And actually, it's part of being a high performer. If you look at athletes, if you look at people who are, very, very good at what they do, they actually take the time to renew.
You need to recharge.
And it's part of a high performing cycle.
I did not know that you guys did that. I've never heard of another company do that. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I did hear in Europe they do these, sabbaticals, et cetera. And I think in Europe, Shell, one of the ladies, they had that, and that's, and she's now the CEO of their global trading. But yeah, it's really interesting, because I think sometimes as employees or high performers, we burn out and we're just frustrated with whatever it is, and you don't necessarily want to leave the company, but you also just maybe a break is all you really need to recharge. And I think the fact that you're offering that, you come back very grateful, because you know that other employers aren't going to be willing to give you that. And so
I can tell you, some people that I met at Schneider actually told me that they joined us because of that.
Wow.
Because they're thinking 3 years from now, they might, have a family.
Yeah.
They might, they have that goal of visiting a country or being volunteer in some part of the world. So they actually are banking on that to make it happen. And I find that fantastic. So I can only encourage companies and HR people in the world to continue to push the envelope of what's possible and not go in the classical things that we need to do in HR. Like, we can innovate.
Yeah.
And it leads me to also, building and leveraging AI, not to replace job, but to enhance ourselves and actually continue to help free up energy and create those companions around you that can help you kind of spend the right amount of time on the right topic, so that you create value for yourself, for your customers, for your teammates. So that's something that I'm super passionate about, because that's a whole other thing in my line of work that is absolutely revolutionizing the workforce.
Wow. Well, I think the greatest thing about, your role today and being able to implement these new changes is that you have other leaders that believe in that, because if not everybody agrees with it, those initiatives just aren't going to happen. So it just says, that you do care about people. And at the end of the day, it is additional cost having to figure out 12 weeks is a lot in terms of just bandwidth and who's going to replace people, but the fact that you're still willing to say, hey, we're gonna figure it out, it goes a long way, I think, for people.
It is. And that's how you have to also think about, freelancers and stuff like that. Because remember, those people buy the time ahead and we contribute to part of that, right? So it's actually a saving when people leave. So that's the magic of it too, right? It can actually help a company manage their own cost at the moment where people take their leave, because that has been accrued. And so that's,
and both parties are happy.
Exactly. But that's the thing. How do you continue to create competitive environment for a company to have the right value proposition as an employer, while still managing costs, because you still need to invest, right? And your biggest asset is your people. So you want them you want them thriving. So
I love that. So you launched the open talent market globally. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And looking back while you launched this, what is a lesson that you learned, maybe the hard way? And just fundamentally, you changed how you approach people's strategy after that.
So back in 2018, I was the head of talent acquisition, and the CHRO at the time, who's the CEO now, was asking me, a question about, how to solve the problem of internal mobility. Schneider is big, 160,000 people, more than 100 countries, but people would tell you it's easier for me to go on LinkedIn to find a job, which is crazy, right? Like, when you have a company like that with so many opportunities. So the idea is that how, if you say you're the CEO of your career, you own your career, we can't do that to do that at scale, you have to leverage the technology. And the idea was like, who can we partner with to actually match the supply and the demand, and actually get, the technology, artificial intelligence, to actually nudge you and tell you, hey, you might be interested in that job, and you haven't think about it yourself, right? And as we were talking earlier, you may not have the network. So the idea was to create a marketplace that's powered by AI, where you put all the jobs. And then we also thought about project, because, part of not getting a role is that people are told you don't have the right skills. So, the idea was, okay, 20% of your time, can you be part of a project that will help you get the job you need, right? But my biggest learning is that, at the time, I incubated it, right? Then after a lot of people made it happen. But I would say the learning was the technology is important, but what matters the most is defining the problem you're trying to solve, understanding the change you're trying to make, what culture, because I will give you an example. We had that rule of being 3 years in a role and having approval of your manager to move. Those kind of things you have to get, you have to get rid of it. It has to disappear. And it's not in technology. It's really the change management that goes with it. So when we launched that open talent market, yes, one of my anxiety was, it's going to be a mess. People are going to move everywhere. Like, it's going to be unmanageable. None of that happened. Of course, has it been perfect? No. Do we have issues? Yes. But as a whole, it's a great success story. We still have an open talent market today. And we're building upon it on, the upskilling journey of, not only are you looking for your next job, but you're looking at developing the skills with your learning platform. So that was incredible. And I think that was one of the proof points of saying, you own your career. We give you, our responsibility is to enable, to give you the right tools so that you can actually navigate that career yourself on your own, while managing with the support of technology. And, people don't actually move every 6 months. Because, if you start doing that, people are going to start asking questions. What have you learned? What
it takes 6 months
have you
to
made?
just understand what you're doing in the new job.
It actually self-regulate itself, because you can't just internally people know you, you have a reputation, you have your own equity. So the system, it works, actually, it works. Now, it does require full transparency. It requires discipline of posting your jobs in the system. It requires people to go on it, to update their profile. You need to unlike, because you need the
AI software,
to learn, right? So, and they can only learn if people put the data and use it and give feedback, right? So that's a learning process, but I think that's one of the reasons I love Schneider, is because we try to innovate and experiment, and that was a great use case for sure.
Wow. So you're saying as an employee, you can go in and apply for jobs internally?
Anytime. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
amazing. Not all companies do
you don't
that.
need to let your manager know. Now, we do give a lot of support as far as the change management. It's probably better to have a conversation with your boss to
Yes.
say that this year you're ready for your next
For any,
challenges,
yeah.
so there's no surprise. So again, it's not the technology, it's the culture.
Yeah.
It's, the values of your company, what do you stand for, and how do you role model that day in, day out. That will make the difference, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can keep talking to you for another hour, but I know we're close on time. I have one last question to close off, but thank you so much. It's been so valuable, and I think a lot of the people on the podcast are just going to love your story. If you could go back to 5-year-old, Mei Lan, what would you tell her today, sitting where you are today?
I think I would just tell her to continue to lead with her heart and her mind, because that's something that's very close to me. That's my motto, leading with heart and mind. And, just listen to understand, ask question, be curious, because that's kind of what keeps you moving. And one thing as well is doing the right thing is never wrong, right? Even if you know that it might, create some negative things, ultimately, I think when you do the right thing, you can look at yourself in the mirror and just like move on, right? So that's what I would say, heart and mind.
I love that. Great way to end the podcast. So thank you all for tuning in to another Flipping the Barrel podcast. We'll catch you on the next one. And thank you so much to Schneider Electric for the invitation to have Flipping the Barrel here. See you guys.